Hello, Hunters, and welcome back to Super Fan Natural. Hunters, if your job involves fighting supernatural monsters, then you're going to need some quality weapons. Now, Supernatural primarily takes place in America, so conventional firepower isn't really an issue. Unfortunately, regular bullets and blades aren't always effective against monsters and demons and extra-dimensional bug people. So, if you want to shore up your odds of surviving the hunter life, then you probably want to get yourself a weapon with a bit of supernatural bite. You know, something imbued with a little extra something that lets a seemingly ordinary death machine put the hurt on monsters and spirits. Magical weapons are something the show had since their first season, and over 15 years, we saw quite a few enchanted arms pop up. In this video, I'll do my best to explain all of the magical weapons that the Winchesters encountered in the show. As per usual, we've got to set some ground rules for what makes it onto the list. After all, there's a lot of stuff in the show that can be used as a weapon. For the purposes of this video, I want to focus on items that were, from the very beginning, created to be weapons with mystical properties. As such, I'm not including things like the Hands of God, because while their power can be weaponized for some potent attacks, it doesn't seem like that's how they were supposed to be used. I'm also not including mundane things that act as kryptonite for specific monsters, things like holy water or silver. This also includes instances where regular weapons are given the ability to hurt specific creatures through a blessing, such as Shoujo being vulnerable to katanas blessed with a Shinto prayer. Also, I decided not to include weapons that are created by reworking spells or rituals, so no demon bombs, witch-killing bullets, or hyperbolic pulse generator. Finally, we have to have some sort of confirmation that a particular weapon actually has special properties in the show. We see a few props throughout the series that are famous for being supernatural in most stories or lore, but for which the show Supernatural doesn't really give any magical feats. The best example of this would be the Spear of Destiny. We see it in the show, and in real-life legend, the spear is supposed to have some magical powers, but in-universe, there's no information about the thing, so we're not including it here. The first real magical weapon that the Winchesters encountered is one of the most iconic in the series, the Colt. Side note, this thing is so important and mysterious that I've actually made an entire video dedicated to explaining it, so my coverage here will be just a bit lighter. Anyway, the Colt is a magical revolver invented by a fictional version of real-life inventor Samuel Colt, though we have very little solid information about how he managed to do it. According to John Winchester, the gun was made in 1835 on a night when, quote, Halley's Comet was overhead, and those men died at the Alamo. It's never really confirmed whether any of that played a role in giving the gun its mojo, but whatever the process, it granted the world a supernatural six-shooter with incredible monster-slaying abilities. This thing is so potent that most of the hunters who know about its existence believe that it can literally kill anything. It wasn't just humans who believed this either. Several old and knowledgeable beings, such as the demon Crowley and the angel Castiel, believed that the mystical cowboy gun had the power to delete archangels like Lucifer himself, who, if you aren't familiar, was the devil and one of the most powerful creatures in existence. Ultimately, Lucy proved that the gun can't gank everything, as he tanked a cap right to his stupid face and survived. According to him, he was one of, quote, 5 things in all of creation that the gun can't kill, though he's the only one we ever saw survive a fatal shot, so we never found out what or whomst the other 4 are. So the Colt isn't omnicidal, but that doesn't mean it ain't super powerful. It can't destroy archangels, but we do know that it can take out vampires, demons, phoenixes, and pagan gods, which is a pretty impressive spread. It's also worth mentioning that amongst the confirmed kills were the Alpha Vampire and a Prince of Hell, 2 of the oldest and strongest monstrosities to ever walk the earth. We unfortunately never got to see it used against things like white-eyed demons or regular non-archangels, but it seems like most fans agree that it could put both of them down with a well-placed shot. Also, since the Colt is, a gun, it has the advantage of being a magical ranged weapon, which isn't super common. Almost everything else on this list requires their wielders to get up close and personal with monsters that can rip off a human head with a single hand, and that's just something you don't have to worry about with the Colt. Now, the gun does have its own special quirks to deal with, the first of which is its ammo. The gun is capable of firing regular-ass bullets from Walmart, but unfortunately, these mundane rounds won't carry any supernatural stopping power. In order to get the most out of the Colt, you gotta load it with special ammunition, which isn't available at any store that we know of. When first forging the firearm, Samuel Colt included 13 magic bullets to go with his creation, and while we don't know how these rounds were made, We do know how to make replacement shots. All you gotta do is wash some silver bullets in a tincture of holy oil, sage, and myrrh, say a few words of Latin, and bada bing bada boom, you got new Colt rounds. Unfortunately, you can't ice a monster with a shot anywhere on their body. Every fatal hit we ever saw from the Colt landed in a target's head or heart, and we never saw it used against something without humanoid anatomy. We do know that if a demon is shot in the leg, or the leg of its vessel, it'll hurt the evil spirit quite a bit, though there's nothing to suggest that this damage is permanent or would eventually be fatal. Still, despite all of its limitations, the show's first magical weapon was one of its most useful, so much so that it had to be ignored for several years before finally getting melted down for good in Season 12. Moving past the pistol, we met our next entry in Season 3, when the demon Ruby whips out a fancy knife which she uses to slay a trio of demons. This special stabber went by a few different names throughout the series, from Ruby's knife to the demon blade to the demon killing knife, or just the knife. Whatever you want to call it, this thing stuck around for the rest of the series and became one of the Winchester's go-to weapons for dealing with demons because, as the name Demon Killing Knife suggests, it can kill low-level demons. Also, like the Colt, I made a whole video dedicated to this thing, which you can watch for more of an in-depth analysis. Compared to the Colt, the knife has a much shorter list of supernatural creatures that it can neutralize. If jabbed into the vital organs of a person possessed by a black or red-eyed demon, the blade will destroy the dark creature inside for good. Now, in most cases, this will also kill the host because, they were just stabbed. But that's not a 100% guarantee. We did see one case where Bobby was stabbed in just the right spot to kill the demon, while Bobby himself was left alive long enough to receive life-saving surgery. Look, odds are that if you get poked with this thing, you're gonna go down with the demon. But hey, you may just get lucky, I guess. Anyway, the knife doesn't work against all demons. There are 4 heavyweights we know of who are able to tank a stabbing that would have put down a weaker imp, and while the jab did hurt them to some degree or another, they were all still able to walk it off. First, there was Alistair, a white-eyed demon and grand torturer of hell. Each time he got knifed, it seemed to hurt him, and on one occasion, a heart shot dealt him enough pain to slow him down a bit, but it still didn't seem like the knife could put him down for good. Next, there was Abaddon, a black-eyed knight of hell. Like Alistair, the blade stung Abaddon, but she was able to recover, and eventually it was basically confirmed the knife couldn't kill her. Next, the ancient demon Cain was completely unaffected by a stab to the heart, which makes sense since he had the Mark of Cain, which makes its carrier nearly indestructible. Finally, the yellow-eyed Prince of Hell Ramiel was barely hurt by the knife, though he did at least spark a little bit. It's widely assumed that the blade wouldn't work against other knights, princes, or white-eyed demons, but besides them, the rest of Hell is probably susceptible. Outside of demons, the knife is pretty much just a normal blade. It can kill hellhounds, though honestly, that's not all that impressive since those things can also get blown up by homemade explosives. We did see it slay a Rougarou once, but that happened in the alternate dimension of Purgatory, which doesn't work the same as Earth. We don't really get a whole lot of information about the knife's history pre-Ruby. The show never reveals where she got it from or who originally created it. The only hint we ever were given was a throwaway line identifying it as an ancient demon-killing knife of the Kurds. Well, that's a name that gets thrown out by one character, and Dean claims that that's what the knife is, but I don't really know how he'd know that. A deleted scene in Season 13 lends credence to the claim, but I just don't know where Dean would have gotten that information prior to Season 8. Oh, and if you're wondering about the writing on the blade, sorry, it doesn't mean anything. It's not a real language, just gibberish. The knife is the show's first magical blade, but not its most prominent. In Season 4, angels were introduced, along with their go-to weapon, the Angel Blade. Now, in some stories, angels wield great flaming broadswords, but in Supernatural, the angelic arm takes the form of a silver short sword / long dagger with a 3-sided triangular blade, somewhat similar to a rondel dagger. So, they're a little less majestic, but that doesn't mean they're not effective. One well-placed poke from these puppies will not only destroy most demons, but also vanquish the very angels that carried the blades in the first place, a trick that the knife just can't pull off. Also, unlike the knife, there's more than one angel blade. In fact, there's hundreds, or maybe even thousands of these things. We don't get a lot of information about the creation or distribution of these silvery stabbers, but it sort of seems like every angel has one literally up their sleeve in case they gotta get down and dirty. As supernatural weapons, Angel Blades are incredibly effective. As stated, they can neutralize both angels and demons, though they don't work against all of heaven and hell. The blades can put down angels up through the level of a seraph, but they're almost completely useless against archangels. When it comes to demons, we know that they can gank black and red-eyed fiends, but they don't seem to work against the yellow-eyed princes, as seen by the fact that Ramiel didn't even flicker when jabbed through the back. We don't get to see if they would ice white-eyed demons or knights of hell, but it's worth noting that both Lilith and Abaddon made an effort to not get stabbed, so at the very least, they probably sting like a bitch. They're also effective against Reapers and Hellhounds, which are sort of like angels and demons. Besides spiritual beings, we also see Angel Blades take out a couple of earthly monsters, namely werewolves and Jinn. It's worth noting that both of these creatures are vulnerable to silver, and the blades look silvery, so I don't know, maybe they're just made of silver? Silver with a bit of god magic worked in? Outside of combat, Angel Blades can be used for another very specific purpose. By using the blade to create a little nick in the throat of an angel's vessel, it's possible to extract said angel's grace, the spiritual essence that makes them angels. Doing this will convert the angel into a puny, powerless human with all the regular puny human weaknesses. And this can even be done to archangels. I should point out that the blades themselves don't pull the grace out, they just create the wound through which it can be extracted. In addition to the regular angel blades, the series showed off a few variations of the heavenly weapon. First up, in Season 10, we learned that a special class of angel, known as the Grigori, were equipped with a longer version, known as an angel sword. These things are really cool. They've got a hilt and a longer blade, and apparently, they're each inscribed with the name of their Grigori. They're so damn cool, but they don't seem to be any more potent than regular blades. Now, if you want a real upgrade, you need to find yourself an Archangel blade. Unlike the standard straight silver blades, the swirly golden Archangel variant is capable of capping archangels, though it can only do so when in the hands of another archangel. Kinda dumb, but at the very least, lower beings are capable of using it as a regular angel blade. There's a lot of question marks when it comes to the Archangel blades. We only ever see one of the official golden version per universe, but way back in Season 5, Gabriel claimed that the standard-looking silver angel blade that he carried could kill him. He could have just been lying, yet Lucifer didn't seem surprised when he appeared to die after taking a poke to the heart. So was that an Archangel blade? If so, then does every Archangel get an Archangel blade? Also, back when Season 4 was first airing, I remember the TV guide description for the episode On the Head of a Pin called the Angel Blade, the Sword of Lucifer. That doesn't come up in the episode, or ever, so it was probably just an error, but I think it's kind of funny. The last sort of variant that we saw wasn't a full separate weapon, but rather a unique modification to regular angel blades. At several points in the series, we see characters melt down the blades to produce special bullets that each carry the power of a full angel blade. This doesn't get used very often, probably because it's a bit overpowered and would make regular guns effective against creatures that normally require special close quarters weapons, and thus would sap a bit of tension out of the series. Also, I'm including these and not witch-killing bullets because the Angel Blade bullets are made from an already existing magical weapon as opposed to a spell. The last thing that I'll say about Angel Blades is that I'm not really sure why they exist. Angels already have the power to smite demons and monsters with their bare hands. So, in a way, the blades put their wielder in more danger since the weapons can be used against them. Now, you could argue that they were meant to be used against angels who go bad, but prior to Season 6, that wasn't really a common enough problem to justify the entire heavenly host packing heat. It just doesn't seem necessary, that's all I'm saying. Still, regardless of the lore, these things are super cool, and the way the angels just drop out of their sleeves, so sick. Alright, enough about angel blades. Let's move on to a significantly more powerful paranormal poker, the very weapon carried by Death itself. Yeah, for some reason, the embodiment of Death itself feels the need to carry around a little extra killin' power in the form of a, what else, scythe. Well, actually the first few times we see it, in Season 4 and 5, it looks like a little handheld sickle, but then a few years later, the original Death whips it out, and it's grown into a full scythe. As you might expect from the personal weapon of the embodiment of Death, this fabulous farm tool is ridiculously dangerous, arguably one of the most powerful weapons in the show. According to Crowley, it can kill
demons and angels and reapers and, rumor has it, the very thing itself.
Now, what he's saying there is that the scythe is rumored to be able to kill death themselves. And you know what? It fucking can. Yeah, one little cut from the harvester here, and Reaper Prime crumbles away to dust, as seen from the original death's, well, death. Hell, even a minute nick to a non-fatal area spells doom, as the injury will cause rot and decay to spread across the Primordial's body in a reaction that the second death Billy claimed was impossible to survive. When a death passes, their scythe will vanish along with them. Then, the next time a Reaper gets got, they'll be reborn as the new death and manifest their own version of the scythe. The OG Big D's was very traditional, looking like a regular old-timey scythe. His successor Billy's had a more stylish and, gothic look to it. Then, during the incredibly brief reign of the third death Betty, the tool took on an almost Egyptian look with a significantly more hooked blade. And yeah, that's basically all there is. It's just a really wicked and potent blade. So we've covered arms that slay angels and demons and death itself. But what if you need to slay something like, a dragon? Like a literal dragon. What then? Well, actually, the Colt and the Scythe could probably do it, but we don't know for sure, and also that's not epic. The only confirmed way to slay Supernatural's lame-ass dragons is with a special type of extremely rare magical sword, sometimes called a Dragon Blood sword. Now, that name doesn't just refer to the fact that said swords can draw draconic blood. No, the thing that makes these swords so rare is the fact that dragon blood is required for their creation. In a sense, this means that you would need to kill a dragon to make a dragon-killing sword. As you might expect, this makes it incredibly difficult to forge said anti-dragon blades. And in the modern day, the 5 or 6 that do exist are stuff of legends. Specifically, Excalibur, the Sword of St. George, the Sword of Brunswick, are identified as Dragonblood swords. Though, I guess technically, only the Brunswick blade is fully confirmed to be one. Besides their anti-dragon properties, the swords don't seem to have any other magical abilities. We know that they aren't indestructible, since Dean was able to shatter the Sword of Brunswick with regular explosives. Now, that particular sword was magically sealed within a rock, and allegedly it could only be freed by a brave and worthy knight, but we don't know if that's a feature of the sword itself, or if that requires additional enchantments. Also, Dean just blows up the rock and uses the broken sword, which still works. We don't know how the swords were originally made, but the technically non-canon book, Bobby Singer's Guide to Hunting, does offer an origin story. The book claims that the swords were created by the Mother of Dragons. Not her. The mother of all monsters, Eve. Allegedly, Eve realized that her dragons posed a real threat to not only humans, but also the rest of monster kind. So, she sacrificed the dragon Hippolyse to create the blades in order to give mankind a fighting chance against her toughest kids. Again, that's technically not canon, but I think it makes sense. We've been talking a lot about blades, right? Angel blades, dragon blades, demon blades. Kinda makes you wonder, what was the first blade? Well, wonder no more. Supernatural has an answer. Within the canon of the show, there is a magical bladed weapon known simply as the First Blade. The alleged First Blade is a little sword dagger thing made out of the jawbone of an animal, and was created back during the dawn of mankind. We don't technically know who created the thing, but the first known owner of the First Blade was the first son of the first man, Cain. Way back in vague biblical times, Cain realized that his younger brother Abel was being manipulated by Lucifer. Being a good big bro, Cain begged Lucy to spare Abel from his sinister schemes, and Lucy agreed to leave the boy alone in exchange for 2 favors from Cain. The first was that Cain had to become the new bearer of an ancient curse known as the Mark, which Lucifer had been holding since before the creation of the universe. I'm not going to get into the Mark too much, I made a whole separate video about it. Just know that it comes with some serious dark powers. The second little itty-bitty favor that Lucifer demanded of Cain was that he personally strike down Abel so that he could go to heaven while he was still pure. With no other options, apparently, Cain accepted the conditions, let Lucy pass the mark to him, and used the First Blade to delete his little bro. Cain would continue to carry his new shiv with him throughout the eons as he carved a bloody path of death and destruction. That's the story behind the blade, but what exactly does it do? What makes this mandible so magical? Well, we don't know the exact mechanics, but at some point, the blade became mystically tied to the mark, essentially becoming an extension of the curse and its bearer. While in the hands of someone with the mark, the blade becomes infused with accursed power, allowing it to take down a variety of supernatural creatures, such as angels, reapers, and demons, including some of the most powerful of Hell's warriors, the Knights of Hell. In fact, the blade is the only known weapon capable of capping someone with the mark, though it can only work like that if someone else has been given a copy of the mark, since a marked one can't permanently off themselves with the blade. When used by anyone who doesn't carry the curse, the blade becomes inert. It's just a regular bone weapon, though it's allegedly still indestructible, regardless of whether or not it's in the sweet, supple grip of a mark bearer. Speaking of gripping the bone, those with the mark are capable of psychically yanking the thing over to themselves so long as it's relatively nearby. We don't know what, if anything, can survive the blade, but I feel pretty safe claiming that probably can't smoke primordials like God or Death. Still, I wouldn't be surprised if it was effective against archangels, but again, we don't know for sure how that would shake out. As far as I can remember, the blade doesn't have any other powers, and actually it most likely lost the ones it did have after the mark was removed and destroyed at the end of Season 10. My biggest question is this really the first blade ever made? Like, before angel blades? Or just the first human blade? Even then, it seems a bit iffy. I mean, little knives made out of sharp rocks was like humanity's third invention. That's probably enough talk about swords and knives, right? What about other bladed weapons, like, say, spears or lances? Supernatural doesn't have a lot of polearms, despite the fact that they're objectively a more useful weapon than swords. Still, it had a few, the first of which was the Lance of Michael. As the name suggests, this pointy stick was created by the Archangel Michael himself, meant specifically to ice one particular angel. We're not told who, the implication is that it's Lucifer, but I like to think it was actually meant for Gadriel. Whoever it was meant to kebab, the lance is quite deadly. Like an angel blade, it has the power to destroy angels and demons, though it does so in a slightly different way. When a demon gets jabbed, it just completely explodes. But if an angel finds themselves on the wrong end of this thing, they'll die a slow, agonizing death in which they're overcome by this weird black corruption that saps their strength and eventually chokes them out. It's pretty gnarly, and its power even affects extremely strong demons, such as the Princes of Hell, who are seemingly immune to regular angel blades. Visually, the lance looks pretty cool. Its haft seems to be made of wood, but the blade itself seems to be made of the same material as angel blades. I mean, physically, it could just be a reshaped angel blade affixed to a wooden stick, but there's more to it than that. Along the area where the haft meets the blade, there are a series of runes etched into the lance, and this script of special symbols is what grants the weapon its unique magical effects. If the spear is broken before an angelic victim can succumb to their cursed wound, the spell will be broken and they'll be instantly healed. I kind of wonder what would happen if you snapped it, like, right after spearing a demon. Like, would they still get dusted, or would the damage also be reversed? We'll never know, because the lance was broken by Crowley in order to save Castiel's life. Good call. Up next, we've got another spear weapon, this one known simply as the Spear. It's also the only entry on this list that's not native to the main universe. Instead, this magical meat fork comes from the dark and monster-filled reality known as the Bad Place, where it was either made or found by one of the world's few humans, Kia Nieves. At a glance, it doesn't seem like much. I mean, it's a big-ass two-pronged spear, so not exactly soft and cuddly, but visually, it looks crude and primitive. Thing is, there's some serious magic running through this thing. At several points in the video, I talked about how certain weapons might be effective against archangels. Well, this prehistoric poker is one of the very few things confirmed to hurt them. A single serious jab to the arm stung Michael so badly he ran away, and it also left a scar on his vessel that he either didn't or couldn't heal. We don't know if the spear can actually kill arcs, but I mean, Michael was one of the most powerful beings in the series, and he certainly treated the thing like it posed a threat to his life. Now, admittedly, that does seem to be the spear's only magical trick, but hey, that's nothing to scoff at. We have absolutely no information about this thing's origins. Dark Kaya just had it. Since she never even suggested making another one after losing it, I'm inclined to believe that she probably found it or inherited it from someone else. But then again, it could also be made of something that can only be found in her native universe. Now, the spear does let out a little pop of energy after getting snapped in half, which to me suggests that it's not just made from some sort of angelic kryptonite, and instead has some enchantment woven into it. Whatever the case, we only ever saw the one spear, and after it gets snapped, it's never used in any other magical endeavors. Before getting to the last major magical murder machine, I want to breeze through a few weapons that I just don't have that much to say about. Firstly, in Season 6, we briefly saw a few weapons that had been stolen from heaven by the angel Balthazar. One of these was the Staff of Moses, a wooden walking stick that could conjure the 10 plagues of Egypt. Another was a weird crystal that could be used to turn someone who looked at it into a pile of salt. This effect would even work against archangels, but it would only destroy their vessel while not really doing anything to the angel itself. Lastly, there was this unnamed dagger that could allegedly kill fates. We don't get to see it in action, but it exists. Moving on, we've got the Bone of a Righteous Mortal bathed in the 3 bloods of the Fallen. Basically, this thing is the only known tool that can destroy a Leviathan on Earth, and it's made by taking the bone of a really nice person and drizzling them with the blood taken from a fallen angel, the King of Hell, and an alpha monster. The weapon can only be used once, since it, along with the Leviathan, will violently kersplode after successfully being stabbed. In Season 8, we were shown a few super weapons wielded by pagan gods. The first and most notable of these is Mjolnir, the Hammer of Thor. From the very little that we see, it seems like this version of Mjolnir can conjure lightning and destroy pagan gods. Also, despite being clearly modeled after Marvel's version of the hammer, this Mjolnir doesn't seem to have any kind of worthiness requirement, probably because that's not really a thing in the original myth. In addition to Thor, Artemis, the Greek goddess of the hunt, also carried some deicidal heat, as she came packing with not one, but 2 Godslayer weapons, a dagger for close combat, and enchanted arrows to snipe gods from a distance. I like to think that these would be pretty effective against weaker monsters, but we just don't know. Next up, we have the Zana Killer, a chonky little blade that can destroy Zana, aka imaginary friends. In Season 11, we saw that Lucifer had a rack full of weapons that I assume were probably enchanted. We don't get to see most of them in action, but he did use one of the spears to spear God's sister, and it seems like this attack actually hurt her. She was pretty banged up already, but considering the fact that both God and Amara herself took action to prevent Lucy from landing another blow, it makes it seem like this thing would be pretty dangerous. The next entry comes from the arsenal of the British Men of Letters. The Beemol have a bunch of alchemically enhanced gadgets and gizmos to help them take out monsters, but unfortunately, the only one we really see anything from is a set of brass knuckles enchanted with Enochian sigils. These puppies essentially give humans the ability to fist fight angels, including archangels, which is pretty sick, not gonna lie. Finishing off this section, we've got 3 more magical swords. The strange golem creatures, Gog and Magog, each wielded magical blades that were apparently forged by some unnamed god. They had the power to destroy angel blades, and could also gank Gog and Magog themselves, which, again, probably not a good idea to carry around one of the only things that can kill you. The final magic sword was a scimitar named Chrysaor, which could allegedly cut through anything. We didn't really see it do anything all that impressive, but the scrub who owned it said that he cut a dude in half with a single swing, and I guess I'll take his word for it. That dork also had a perfume bottle that could shoot out flames. According to him, it was filled with dragon's breath. I don't know if I should count that or not, but I feel like I'll get comments if I don't, so here it is. Alright, let's close out this video with a weapon that actually can kill anything, including reality itself. In the Season 14 finale, Chuck Almighty, aka God, appears to Team Free Will in order to personally lend them a hand in defeating the nigh unstoppable Super Nephilim, Jack. His solution? Well, right there on the spot, he created a brand new mystical gun, which he dubbed the Equalizer. He also throws out the moniker of the Hammurabi, but that gets shot down pretty quick. Whatever it's called, this little gat is by far the most powerful weapon in the show because, according to God himself, that gun can kill anything. Now, technically, we never actually saw it kill anything at all, and in fact, the very episode in which it's introduced also established that God lies a lot, but still, it does seem like he was afraid of its power. After becoming an enemy of the Winchesters, Chuck revived the most powerful demon, Lilith, and sent her to nab the gun from the boys. Now, that could have just been a precaution, but, you don't take precautions unless there's something that poses a threat to you. At the very least, we know that the Equalizer can hurt God. After Sam wings him in the Season 14 finale, he's left weakened, Not fatally so, but enough to trap him in the main universe and leave him vulnerable to cosmic containment curses. That's the kind of damage that required the power of 4 archangels to whammy on God's sister, so I feel 100% confident that a properly placed kill shot from this thing would be capable of capping primordials. So with something this potent, there's gotta be a catch, right? I mean, it's already an actual deus ex machina, and if it's all-powerful with no cost, then that's not super stellar writing. Maybe, like the Colt, it requires some super special ammo? Actually, the Equalizer doesn't use physical ammunition at all. Instead, Chuck claims that it, quote, sends out a wave of multidimensional energy across a perfectly balanced quantum link. Basically, it fires energy bullets. But that's not the most important part of its mechanics. See, the gun creates a connection between the gunman and their target, and any damage done to the victim will also appear on the shooter. For example, when Sam popped Chuck in the shoulder, an identical wound also appeared on Sam himself. The exact science of how it works is a bit blurry, but I personally think that the gun is only omnicidal in the hands of a human. Think about it like this. Most of the monsters can tank a headshot from a regular bullet, but if they got domed by the Equalizer, then the shooter would take the same damage, and if that person is a human, then they will die, which in turn will cause the monster to also die. The way I see it, this thing essentially weaponizes human frailty. Technically, we don't know if that's exactly how it works, but I think it makes both mechanical and thematic sense, and also I think it would be really cool. So the Equalizer is extremely powerful, but there's one more little tidbit that I should mention. See, in Supernatural, reality is founded upon the fairly simple principle that there must be a balance between the forces of creation and destruction. Chuck himself describes it like this.
There's a harmony, a balance in the universe. Light needs dark. Dark needs light. If you blow one of them up, then,
It wouldn't be a good thing.
it'd be really not a good thing. Like, end of reality, not good.
Now, in that clip, he's specifically talking about how he and his sister, the Darkness, both need to exist or not exist at the same time, and how destroying one but not the other will essentially break reality on some fundamental level. So, if we believe that this gun can in fact destroy God, then it means that if anyone other than his twin sister lands a fatal shot on the big man, then, existence is experiencing some catastrophic technical difficulties. Now, technically, we don't know if this would fully brick the entire multiversal quantum construct, but I'm pretty sure that at best, you'd end up like that episode of Ed, Edd n Eddy where reality just stops making sense. And yeah, that's pretty much every single magical weapon in Supernatural, I think. There's a good chance that I missed one or didn't include something that you would've, so comment below with any additions you'd make to the list. Also, let me know which of these mystical arms you'd most want to wield in hunting. I'll have more content for you soon, but for now, carry on,